Then we cut. Hear that crunch? That's what we want. That's what that 00 flour does for it. It allows us to get that crunch. And that is a nice piece. Hey everybody, welcome to It's Just Food with Mike. I'm Mike. I want to show you guys a very simple but delicious pizza recipe from dough to sauce and vice versa to the finished product. And I'm going to do it two different ways. One on a pizza stone and one on a sheet pan, pizza pan thing, which you could use as a sheet tray or however you want to use it. So all we need for ingredients are a handful of things. We need tomato puree, oregano or Italian seasoning if you can't find oregano, sugar, salt, and garlic for the sauce. And for the dough, all we need is bread flour. I'm using 00 flour, yeast, water, and salt. That's it. Okay, so we're going to start with 500 milliliters of tomato puree. I got a kind of a smooth one. Sometimes I'll go a little bit chunkier, depending on what I'm in the mood for. So 500 milliliters of tomato puree. Then if you come over to my lovely paper plate here, you'll see I have 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of sugar, 2 tablespoons of oregano, 2 cloves of garlic. And when you see how easy this is, all I do, dump that in. I have about 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil that I put in. Okay. Stir that up. And I do this about 2 hours before I'm ready. At least 2 hours. You can go overnight with this if you want to as well. Before I'm ready to actually cook the pizza. Okay. That's it. I put a cover on it, throw it in the fridge. Okay, so now we're going to do the dough. And I do this, you have to do this a couple hours ahead as well because it has to have time to rise and proof itself. What I use is 00 flour. You'll see this 00 on here. And what that is basically the standard for Italian pizza. And I use that because it's got a finer grain and it gives you a little bit, makes it a little bit easier to make a thin crust. And if you don't have 00 flour, if you can't find it, I mean, I found this at Walmart. If you can't find it, you can use bread flour. It works just fine as well. But you don't want to necessarily use all-purpose flour for pizza because it doesn't have the protein content and the gluten content that you're looking for to make the pizza dough. So I have here 500 grams of 00 flour or bread flour. This is 00. I'm going to do it in my KitchenAid to at least get it started, and then I'll show you how I knead it afterwards. I have 7 grams of this active yeast. 7 grams. And I measure this out on my digital scale. Accidentally set it to the setting with grams instead of ounces when I was making this recipe. I'm going to use 1 teaspoon of salt. And the way I do this is I'm going to take and dissolve the salt, or put the salt right in here, and then I'm going to add 325 milliliters of warm water. And I'm going to use the dough hook, so I'm going to actually do that while it's going. It makes it a little bit easier. If you don't have a KitchenAid like this with a dough hook, you can use a hand mixer to get it started. I start on a low setting so I don't get flour all over my kitchen. Just pour it in. The whole point of this process right here is to bring it all together, hydrate the flour, and let the yeast start working with the sugars in the flour. Then it'll start to rise a bit once we knead it. Okay, so the dough, as you can see, I just brought it back together, or I brought it together. I added a little bit more water to it. It was a little bit dry, so I just added a little bit more water. Maybe, I don't even think it was a teaspoon of water. You want to do a little bit at a time. I'm just going to pull it out on here. If I were not doing a video for you guys to show you how to knead this, I would have left it in there in the mixer going on medium for about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on where we get to. So to knead this dough, I obviously put some more flour down. I'm just going to turn it over and push. Twist it, turn, push. I'm going to do this until this gets a nice gluten content. We're just kneading this dough together now. This dough is so easy to work with. I kind of developed this a while back because I used to buy the dough balls, and they're great, but they're kind of hard to work with sometimes, and they're getting harder and harder to find. So just again, fold it, push. Fold it and push. If you got to add more flour, you just put a little bit more down. So we're incorporating some air while we do this, and we're building up that gluten content. You can see it starting to now pull back together. That's what we're looking for. We don't need to do this for very long. Just a couple of minutes. Like I said, I would probably go closer to the 5-minute mark if I was doing this on a KitchenAid. That's really what we're looking for right there. Okay. Get some more of this in there. Let's go another minute here. Not even. Okay. This will do the work, the rest of the work on its own while it rises. So what I do is I just take that original bowl I had it in, a little bit of olive oil, toss it around in that, roll it around a little bit so it doesn't crack and stuff while it's rising. And then what I'm going to do is cover this with a towel and put it, because it's summertime, I'm going to put it outside and let it just sit out in the sun for a while. Okay, so it's been about 2 hours-ish out in the summer heat. So you want your dough to stay warm, and it has done that. So now it's risen considerably. What I'm going to do now, that's called the bulk fermentation, and you could actually make a loaf of bread out of this if you wanted to, because it's basically just bread. What I'm going to do is put it back out here, roll it out, cut it into 4 pieces, put those onto a sheet tray, put them back out in the heat and let them rise a second time. That adds flavor and complexity to the dough. So I'm just going to pull this out. You'll see it kind of collapse on itself. That's okay. The yeast worked. It did its job, and it'll continue to do its job in this part. Okay. All we do is roll it in a little bit of flour here so we can work with it. Roll it out into a tube. I'm going to cut it into 4 sections so we have 4 dough balls. Try to make it even. I use a bench scraper. I bought this at Walmart in the grilling section, but these are awesome. Bakers use these all the time for stuff. If you watch my pasta video, I cut the pasta together with this. So all I'm going to do is cut it in half. And then cut each part here in half. Try to keep them as close to as even as you can. Doesn't matter if they're not. And then just roll them into a ball. Doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, we're going to end up flattening these out later anyways. Just try to make it into a ball. It makes it easier if you make a ball out of it to make a round piece of pizza, or make a round pizza. Not that I really care if it's round or not. If I were doing a sheet pizza, I'd probably cut it in half and make 2 pizzas out of that. So I'm just going to put these onto a sheet tray, cover them back up with a towel, and then keep them in a warm place again. For me, it's going to be outside because it's summertime. And let it go for another hour or so. Then I'll show you what we do at that point. So this next section we got to do here, we got to heat our pizza stone if you're using a stone. I'm going to show you another way too if you don't have one. But first piece I'm going to show you is going to be with the stone. You want to put it in your oven. I turn my oven as high as it'll go to 550 degrees. and I put it on the bottom shelf. And that will heat this up. You let this go for a while. You want this surface to be hot in order to get a crispy crust on our dough. Okay, so I put the dough outside for about 45 minutes, and you can see they've almost doubled again. What I need to do now is shape them into the pizza and make the pizza. Put some flour down. Okay. That's actually the pan we're going to make the sheet pizza. No, I should say sheet pizza, but work it around. Stretch it slightly. Let gravity do the work. If you want to use a rolling pin, go ahead. Like I said, I don't even care if this isn't perfectly round. It doesn't matter to me. If you watch pizza being made in Italy, this is kind of just how they do it. It's kind of round. Okay. And again, if you want bigger pizzas, you're going to use larger dough ball. You know, instead of cutting it in fourths, you cut it in half and you got two bigger pizzas. These are a little bit smaller. I've got my pizza peel here. On here, I'm going to put a little bit of cornmeal so that the dough doesn't stick to it and it'll slide off in the oven without messing up on you. What you want to make sure, though, is that the bottom is dry. So what I do is I toss it in a little bit of extra flour here on the bottom to make sure that it's dry. And we assemble the pizza on the peel here. This is going to be a Neapolitan-style pizza where it's just sauce and cheese, and I put basil on at the end. So I take our sauce, and I like a lot of sauce. I'm going to put it in here, move it around. This is the part where my son, who worked at a pizza place, says I do it wrong. He says I use too much sauce, but I like the sauce. This is an amazing sauce. It's really good. And you see, we didn't cook this sauce before we did this part. It cooks in the oven on the pizza. Okay? So try to get the dough or the sauce even. I'm going to take fresh mozzarella, and I'm just going to rip it off. Oh, there's my oven. I'm going to just take chunks of mozzarella and spread it around. Doesn't have to look pretty. If you want to use the pre-sliced rounds, you can. Again, my oven is set to 550 degrees, and the pizza stone is at the very bottom of the oven, or, the very bottom shelf. So I put this in, put it directly onto the stone, and it'll go for 5 to 8 minutes. Oh. Pizza's cooked. Onto that, I'm going to put some fresh basil from my garden. I have to use this stuff up because it's not going to last forever and it's too much. Fresh basil. And some olive oil. Drills is on top. Here, get on there, you. Okay. Then we cut. Hear that crunch? That's what we want. That's what that 00 flour does for it. It allows us to get that crunch. And that is a nice piece of pizza. A little hot, though. Okay, so now we're going to do the one where if I don't have a stone, I would do it on a pie pan or a sheet tray. But like I said, if you're using a sheet tray, you're just going to make it more into a rectangle. You'd even take just half the dough and make 2 pizzas out of that on a sheet tray. So I'm just going to basically do the same thing I did on the others. And really, this size is perfect if you have one of those little pizza ovens. I don't have one of those yet, but I'm going to get one. But for me, this works out fine. And again, you could use more dough to fill this whole thing out. It's the same thing, but this time I'm going to use shredded mozzarella. This is what you would see more in a pizza joint. And get that garlic. You don't want to eat that garlic. Won't hurt you, but it'd be a pretty harsh bite there. Again, you're going to make this however you want it. You know, you can use more sauce, less sauce, play with it, and see how you like it. Shredded mozzarella. And I use a lot of cheese too. I have one son that likes cheese pizzas, but I'm doing pepperoni. Spread it out evenly. And I don't measure this stuff. It's just kind of eyeballing it. Spread out the pepperoni. You could put olive oil on this if you want. I'm not going to. Same oven, 550 degrees, and I put this on the bottom rack. This dough still, because I'm using that 00 flour, it'll allow it to get crispy even on this pan. When I started making pizzas at home years ago, I would put I'd put the pizza on the back of a sheet tray and slide it into the oven onto a stone. But I don't have that anymore. So just going to throw this in the oven. Again, 5 to 10 minutes. It won't take 10 minutes. Okay, so the sound on the last part of the video where I pull it out of the oven and stuff got all screwed up. So I'm reshooting this one for you. All it is me pulling it out of the oven, cutting it, and showing you. This is such a forgiving dough and sauce recipe, and it's so simple. Anybody can do this, and have your kids get involved, because my kids have gotten involved with it. They love playing with the dough. They love trying to throw it up in the air and trying to catch it. Give this a shot, and please leave a comment if you could. If you like the video, give it a like, subscribe if you're not subscribed, share it with your friends. Try this recipe. It's really, really simple, but it's delicious. I'll see you all next time. Have an awesome day.